Okay, so I have done a new message and I have entitled this message Seven Types of Men to Avoid. Now, a couple of things I want to say. Number one, this message is loosely based on the seven deadly sins. And number two, it is by no means a complete exhaustive list, and it applies to women as well as men. And number three, it's also intended for women who are praying for a husband, for a mate. And number four, it's also intended for men. Men, make sure you do not be any of these seven types of men. Okay, so without any further ado, I've named each one of these men, but they are based on a particular man from the scriptures. And the reason I did this is because we don't usually know people named like Eglon and Nabal and not even Solomon these days. So I've given them modern names and also attached with them a one of the seven deadly sins that's has the same letters as their name. So, without any further ado, let's get on with it. First type of man that you want to avoid, I have called him Lustful Larry. And this is based on Solomon, who, when he had 1,000 wives, in 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. And it says, King Solomon loved many foreign women, in addition to the daughters of Pharaoh, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from the nations of which Yah had said to the children of Israel, Do not come into marriage with them, and they shall not come into marriage with you, for they will surely sway your hearts after their gods. But Solomon clung to them for love. He had 700 wives who were noble women and 300 concubines, and his wives swayed his heart. And again, that's from 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. Now, how do you know when you found a lustful Larry? What kind of behaviors will you see? First of all, Larry will need more than one lover, probably just for sex. And this includes the type of man who always looks at porn. Secondly, he will appear to have a relationship with the Most High, but not wholeheartedly. And thirdly, he is likely to have a good job or good source of income with good money. Okay, so number two, the second type of man that you want to avoid, I have called him Gluttonous Gordon. And this is based on Eglon in the book of Judges, chapter 3. And it says here, Eglon, king of Moab, was a very obese man. Ehud was a deliverer that Yah had raised up to save the people of Israel. Ehud made himself a double-edged sword, 18 inches long, and he strapped it to his right thigh under his clothes. Ehud stabbed Eglon with his sword, and the hilt went in after the blade, and the fat closed around the blade, for he did not draw the sword out of his belly, and the excrement came out. Ugh. It's kind of a rather disgusting vision right there, but it's kind of an analogy there somewhere, isn't there? Try to tell people about their sin, and they justify it. They'll say things like, "Oh, but drinking really isn't that bad for you. It's okay if I have just one more. And every man has needs, and it's okay to look at pornography. Smoking isn't really a sin, doesn't make you a bad person. Or smoking marijuana, it's natural. God made it. I can do it." And all these types of things. But don't be fooled. Sin is sin. And you got to tell people when they're in the wrong. And it's up to them to accept it. But anyway, I digress. So I want to point out here in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11, and I'm quoting the Complete Jewish Bible here. And Paul said, "No, what I wrote to you was not to associate with anyone who is supposedly a brother, but who also engages in sexual immorality, is greedy, worships idols, is abusive, gets drunk, or steals. With such a person you should not even eat." Now, what kind of behaviors will you look out for? How will you know when you have met Gluttonous Gordon? First of all, he will claim to have a relationship with the Most High, but his physical life will show otherwise. You'll see signs in his face, in his body. For example, he will probably be very unhealthy, like maybe he's very obese, or if he's a smoker, he coughs all the time, or you'll be able to see the signs. And not only that, thirdly, he will not listen to reason when he is told about his sin and how he must repent. Not even if you tell him straight from the Word. He won't listen. All right. The third type of man that you want to avoid, I have called him Greedy Gary. And Gary is based on Nabal in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 25, verses 9 through 11. And it says, "David's young men went and delivered his message word for word to Nabal. Nabal tore into them. 'Who is this David? Who is the son of Jesse? The country is full of runaway servants these days. Do you think that I'm going to take good bread and wine and meat, freshly butchered for my sheep shearers, and give it to men I've never laid eyes on? Who knows where they've come from?'" Now, this statement that he said, this violates the law in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 34, which says, "The stranger who dwells among you shall be to you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Now, if that applies to strangers who are not part of your country, how much more so does it apply to people who are of your own country and your own race or whatever? So you should help people. And Gary does not. Now, how do you know when you've met a Greedy Gary? First of all, he is unwilling to help people in their time of need. Secondly, he shows selfishness with the blessings that Yah has blessed him with. And thirdly, he does not care about the commands in the Torah. So, watch out for Greedy Gary. Now, the fourth type of man that you want to avoid, this one I have called Childish Charlie. Childish Charlie. This is the one where it kind of deviates from the seven deadly sins. This one I have replaced for laziness, but follow along. This Childish Charlie is based on King Ahab in the book of 1 Kings chapter 21. And Childish Charlie, it's twofold. First of all, he will show childish behavior. And I'm paraphrasing when I read this word here. It says here, Naboth was a man who had a vineyard next to the palace of King Ahab. So Ahab said to Naboth, "Give me your vineyard so I can have it for a vegetable garden." And Naboth refused, saying that Yah forbids selling your inheritance permanently. And that command can be found in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23. So, Ahab lay down on his bed, turned his face to the wall, and would not eat any food. Now, how childish is that? So the second thing that Ahab did, he showed the lazy behavior. Okay, now this is where the laziness and the seven deadly sins comes in. And it says here, his wife, Ahab's wife, Queen Jezebel, asked what was wrong, and Ahab told her. So Jezebel set up false witnesses to testify against Naboth, saying that he had blasphemed Yah and the king. This, therefore, stripped him of his rights as a citizen and set him up to be sentenced to death. So they took him outside of the city and stoned him to death. So, what kind of behaviors do you find in Childish Charlie? First of all, he will sulk or give you the silent treatment when he does not get his way. Secondly, he will not man up and step up to the plate to rebuke you for your sin, like Ahab did not do with Queen Jezebel, his wife. And number 3, Childish Charlie will not solve his problems for himself. He will let other people solve his problems for them. For him. Okay. So moving on, the 5th type of man you want to avoid, I have called Wrathful William. Wrathful William. Now this William is based on Balaam in Numbers chapter 22. Now that's kind of a long story there, so I'll just a little bit of background before I read directly from the word. Balaam was a Gentile prophet who lived in a Gentile nation. He was asked to curse Israel by Balak, king of Moab. And he sent some of his officers to Balaam to ask him to do this. Balaam declined because Yah told him to. So Balak sent more officers, higher ranked than the last ones. And this time, Yah told him to go, but to say only what Yah told him to say. However, Balaam went before his heart was ready to speak. And this narrative can be found in the book of Numbers, chapter 22, verses 21 through 30. Okay. Oh, excuse me. This narrative following narrative can be found in Numbers chapter 21 through 30, and it says, "So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Then the anger of Yah was aroused because he went, And the angel of the Most High took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. And he was riding on his donkey, and 2 of his servants were with him. Now the donkey saw the angel of the Most High standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the road. Then the angel of the Most High stood in a narrow path between the vineyards, with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Most High, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Most High went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right hand or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Most High, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Most High opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have abused me. I wish that there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you." So the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you?" And Balaam said, "No." Now, what kind of behaviors do you look for? What kind of behaviors do you see in wrathful William? First of all, William will act impulsively. Secondly, he will ignore instructions from the Most High. Thirdly, he cannot see or directly ignores signs that he is headed down the wrong path, and he won't listen if you tell him. And fourthly, and worst of all, he will become violent, especially when he does not get his way. Watch out for the guy who beats the dog, beats the cat, or just, beats the children, because eventually he will beat you. So watch out. Don't go anywhere near him. Don't let him anywhere near you. Okay, number 6. The sixth type of man you want to avoid, I have called envious Eric. And this is based on Saul, who envied David, in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 18, verse 10. And it says, "And it happened on the next day that the distressing spirit from Yah came upon Saul, and he prophesied inside the house. So David played music with his hand, as at other times, but there was a spear in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the spear, for he said, 'I will pin David to the wall.' But David escaped his presence twice." Now, what kind of behaviors will you look for? Will you watch out for? How will you know when you have met an envious Eric? First of all, Eric will mock you or belittle you in public or in private. Secondly, Eric will restrict your behavior. For example, he will not let you go to church, will not let you go to Hebrew class, won't let you go to the supermarket by yourself, whatever. He will restrict your behavior. And thirdly, Eric, much like Wrathful William, Eric will become violent if nothing else works. So avoid Eric at all costs. And number 7, and lastly, the last type of man that you want to avoid, I have called Prideful Pete. And this is based on Haman in Esther chapter 3. We'll start at verse 2. And it says, "And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, 'Why do you transgress the king's command?' Now it happened, when they spoke to him daily, and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman, to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told them that he was a Hebrew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath." Now, how do you know when you have met a prideful Pete? Prideful Pete will demand respect without earning it. Number 2, he will plot revenge on you and those around you if he does not get it. And lastly, Prideful Pete will not care at all about the things of Yah and what is important to him. So that's it. Just in review, let's do not be like lustful Larry. That is, do not be like Solomon with 1,000 wives, who he clung to his wives for love and not to the Most High. They swayed his heart. Not a good thing. Don't be like gluttonous Gordon. Don't be like Eglon in Judges 3, who constantly filled his stomach and doesn't care about things of Yah at all. Don't be like greedy Gary. Don't be like Nabal. Look after your fellow man when they're in their time of need. If you have it, give it. Number 4, don't be the childish Charlie. Don't be like Ahab. If you got a problem, man up. State your problem. Go to the person who has caused you trouble. Get right. Tell them, you wronged me and I'm unhappy about it. Keep the friendship, keep everything cool. But don't just sulk, lay in your bed, and face the wall. Number 5, don't be a wrathful William. Don't be that type of person who will beat animals or children or women. Number 6, don't be the envious Eric. Don't be like Saul, who envied David. You have what you have because of the Most High. Be thankful. And number 7, don't be prideful Pete. Don't be like Haman. Pride comes before a fall, just like it did for Haman. Haman was hung from the gallows because he thought that the honor from the king was for him. But don't be so full of yourself that other people cannot talk to you, cannot relate to you. We all should be humble before our fellow man. We all should be humble before the Most High. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. Shalom.